So we're all here for the book launch of Katy's amazing Voidspace conversation book. Congratulations. So my name's Adrian Hon. I'm going to do a brief Q&A. Don't worry, lots of wine still left. And then bring Neil as well on to join us for the Q&A, and then we'll go and open it up for discussion afterwards for people to ask any questions they have. And then Katy's going to be doing a signing of...
Cool. Yeah.
Is that news to you?
It is. Very happy to sign.
People want to get their book signed. You can't sell a book at a book launch without signing.
I shall follow the
Yes. So first of all, congratulations so much on this book. It's just an incredible anthology of these interviews and essays, over the last few years of like an area that I think is, people are very interested in interactive, participatory, and immersive art. But as much writing as there kind of needs to be a lot more. And I think the really unique thing you've done here is bring together artists, Sylvia Mercurali, Tassel Stevens, people from Punch Drunk, from Deadweight, some of whom, are very famous, and some of whom often get overlooked. And I think you're doing like a really important service by giving them a space to talk. Like a lot of people don't feel like they have the time or like the opportunity to go and talk about their art. And guiding that discussion in like really interesting ways. I think you'll see in the book. And this is free. Like you can actually, people should go and buy the book, but of course, Voidspace is you've been doing this for free on the website. It's not a Substack. It's not Patreon yet. It's free. And so I guess the first question I want to ask is, you've been doing this for a while. Why bring it into a book now?
Okay. Thank you, Adrian, for that lovely intro. And before I start, I'd love to say how nice it is actually to be hosted at an event.
Yeah.
Like I should be stretched out on a litter or something. It's very indulgent. But yeah, so why did I bring these into a book? Well, first of all, a little kind of historical point is that the Voidspace started out as a literary publication before anything else. So it started out as an online zine that was there to bring different worlds together. So people from the interactive fiction community who have their own like games festivals and competitions, and people from the independent literary community whose writing has a lot in common, this kind of introspective, very affecting stuff, but maybe they don't really know about each other. So the Voidspace originally was intended to try and bring those two worlds together. Obviously, as time has gone on, I realised that those points of commonality stretch beyond interactive fiction and literary fiction. They also stretch to interactive performance, to audio work, to live art, and that there are all these little tendrils that all come back towards the kind of common core of engagement. And so I think creating a literary artifact out of that work was really important to me because I think first of all, having that artifact is a great thing. I think there's I have a real problem with the passage of time, which is a real shame because if you really like theatre, you really have to come to terms with ephemerality, and that's really hard. I just want to pin those butterflies to the wall. So, and I've also noticed, say 10, 15 years ago, I went to a lot of shows after The Drowned Man closed, and now I know that those shows are only really still alive in the memories of like the few people who saw them. I actually did some work experience when I was younger for the National Theatre Archive, so I've always been interested in becoming an archivist. Turned out to be easier to become a lawyer than become an archivist. It tells you everything you need to know about the state of heritage in this country. So I think that sense of documentation and of putting something into a permanent form that is going to give people a snapshot into this, or either this particular moment in time, into foundational work. So something else that I noticed as I was doing interviews, I'm sorry this is a long answer,
No.
is that I'd speak to people who would have really cool and interesting ideas. I spoke to somebody who did a very well-reviewed voting show, and he told me how excited he was that the audience are going to be really voting on the outcome and it's going to do this and the other. And I was like, great! So, did you see Fight Night when it was in Watford a few weeks ago? And kind of face kind of went a bit, no, what, who, okay. And you're like, well, if you want to make a voting show, I'm not saying you have to make it like Fight Night or know about Fight Night. Well, if you know about Fight Night, then you can consider how your voting show goes in relation to other voting shows that are out there, and maybe that will inform how you design. You don't have to start from completely the ground up. And so I really want, I think, as well as just capturing the present moment in Amber, I want to find a more permanent way of giving people access to some knowledge of what's come before, because I think it will benefit everyone. And the final part of this very long answer is that it was really important to me, and actually I'd like to have a shout out to Matthew over here for really helping me shape my thinking on this. And he said to me, Katy, you've got a real opportunity here in how you organise your material to really shape how, an argument about what this form or mixture of forms can be. And so for me, being able to have a text that, yes, has lots of stuff about theatre, but also mixes it in there with some games and some IF. There's some essays on the lit mag side and the press side that maybe, you'll see when you buy the book, how I've used it to show people some of the different kinds of thing that we should consider as part of this thing, but also some strands of what this thing can do. So the political and community side, the weird fiction side, there is so many different angles to it. And so I think bringing them all together in book form will hopefully provide this community with a great artifact for posterity. I don't have to keep on paying web fees forever to keep this stuff in the world. But also, I hope, be a more readily accessible conversation starter too, because I think that the best outcome is for the conversation to continue.
Yes, and you're bringing it home again to the original idea of Voidspace as a small press, as a kind of literary institution as well, and so it makes kind of complete sense to sort of have it as this physical book that people can go lend to each other and buy after this Q&A.
Scribble angry notes in the margins. That would be the ultimate sign of success for me.
And one of the interviews I really enjoyed reading was with the director of Tamara, which is sort of proto sort of environmental theatre, punch drunk stuff, and that was a really good get. Are there people who you would really like to interview for your next book who you weren't able to get?
Yes, absolutely. If anyone in this room knows Fiona Templeton, please put us in touch, because do you know Fiona Templeton? Please put us in touch, because so there was this incredible show called You the City that was a one-to-one site responsive across the city, lots of cool things that you kind of recognise. Maybe some of the things that Cowboy was trying to do, but very successful, staged in London and New York. There's an incredible script actually, which is I think the prime example of how you should write a script for this kind of work. And it was staged in 1988. And hardly anyone knows about it. I found out about it by chance through a conversation with someone. So yeah, she's absolutely the top of my list.
Brilliant. And on that, are there particular kind of, I think it's really fascinating for me that the book has. Everyone talks about immersive experience, immersive art as being a kind of wide form, but you're sort of really bringing in things like interactive fiction, which I think is just a great way to sort of, and tabletop role-playing games, things like that, to really sort of try and get people to expand their mind about what these things, how these things are connected. Are there areas of immersive art, or interactive art that you would like to see people make more of, or that you sort of like them learn more about?
Oh, that's two different things.
You can choose
So
which.
I would say I would like to learn more about escape rooms because I don't really understand them from a sort of philosophical standpoint. But I've got some ideas in the works of how to do that. In terms of what I'd like to see people make more of, I mean, I would love to see the possibilities of audio work be explored further. So, for example, you'll see in the book I interviewed Sylvia Mercorali, who has done incredible things involving audio. And some people have said to me, oh, well, I mean, how is audio interactive? It doesn't change, you know, you're not inputting into it, it just goes in your ears once. And I mean, obviously I think that's missing the point. I've been thinking a lot about what makes interactivity. There's got to be some kind of exchange or conversation. And not just in Sylvia's work, but some other great audio pieces. What is there is a conversation between the text that you're hearing and often the space that you're in. So for example, like swimming home, it was done for lockdown and you do it at home and you run a bathtub full of water and then you are asked to consider certain things and you hear other people's stories and the interaction there is you with your environment and then with others, like a commonality of experience. But there is a missing piece there. If you were just playing it in a different context, it wouldn't have the right effect. So that's just my little bid for this stuff. It actually does need that, you know, engagement from the participant. So yeah, I would just love to see more work that explores that.
Yes, she plays zombies well. I heard that's good. So I have this thing which you've seen, which is spicy question. I'm going to ask you what things you think are overrated and what things you think are underrated.
Overrated, underrated, woman free. So I'm going to just reframe that slightly because I think if I say that something's overrated, it's a matter of personal taste. I think it's really understandable, particularly once big money gets involved, that you want to make something that is going to be very easily recognizable, and that like you're going to bring in a big IP, and maybe you're going to be like, hey, you can be in the world of Batman, we're going to recreate Gotham City, and it's going to be awesome. And then maybe, I hope it's purely hypothetical. Has anyone done an immersive Batman?
Yeah.
I tried to bring an example. Oh no! Can someone bring an IP that hasn't been brought in yet? Okay,
Amadeo.
Shall we just pretend that no one's done an immersive Batman? Because that wasn't a pop at a particular show. That was meant to be hypothetical. So hypothetically, saying, oh, let's bring people to Gotham City. I mean, cool, but wouldn't it be even, like if you're working from the outside in, so like we have this piece of set, and that's what's going to make it immersive, or we have this piece of experimental technology, and that's going to be the thing that we're building, for example, our funding strategy around. Immersive arts, which is great because you need support to develop these new things, and that's absolutely fine. And I actually give a lecture to Goldsmith students to say, when you go off to find how your experimental technology is going to do something fun, don't forget your basically your basic dramaturgy. So what I'd like to see are, and instead of, okay, sorry, immersive Gotham City, wouldn't it be cool to have someone just do a more like the noir genre generally? The noir genre generally hasn't been explored enough, and you could do so much more if you're starting from something that lots of people I speak to who are really good have in common is that they're always starting from the point of view of the audience experience and the audience role in relation to the show. And if you think out who your audience is in relation to what they're seeing, and think that through, and think through then around that little core, your world building and everything that comes from there, then you can do something amazing even if you don't have a massive budget. And also, I think the thing that makes theatre most exciting is the use of abstraction. You know, we use our minds, or when we're watching a show on stage, I don't know, we accept, just without even thinking about it, that weeks might pass between scenes, or everything's kind of compressed and abstracted. And that's absolutely fine. And I think, Punch Drunk, for example, something that people don't say enough about Punch Drunk is that they know when to use abstraction. So yes, they have lots of cool touch real stuff, but they never try to go 100% real. They will always have a bit, like I think Felix has said before, a thing that deliberately throws you and sits outside of the kind of reality of the show. And that is that is bringing in abstraction to kind of heighten your experience of it. So rather than overrated, underrated, I would love to see fewer shows that are kind of starting from there and sort of trying to go there, and more shows that are really thinking from that kernel of audience experience first, and then building out to whatever their budget will allow.
That makes sense.
I'm making Josephine proud.
I just have a frown.
So I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. You've done a lot of interviews for Voidspace. Over that time, what have you found makes for a good interview? What do you think makes for a good interviewer?
Interesting. So, I think that a good interview actually weirdly, this isn't to be like, oh, I'm actually doing what you're doing, is actually the kind of good ground of any good responsive performance, because that's what an interview is, where you're aiming to get something good out of your person, is a mixture. So first of all, do your prep. Just prepare the hell out of it so you know what you want to ask about. Secondly, good structure. Kind of know, again, what you think you might be getting out of that interview, the things that you're interested in, so that you are giving it a direction and a sense of something to make it interesting. But then, crucially, you take that preparation and that structure, and then you come prepared to genuinely listen. And not just stick rigidly into the structure, but to be prepared to jump off wherever the interviewee is going. But if you've got that structure in your head, then you can kind of know when to bring it back to kind of make it apparently like an hourglass which would fall over.
Now I feel like I should go and talk more about hourglasses. You also have these essays in the book, which are original for the book. Is that right? So how did you go about choosing the essays and the authors?
Interesting. So I will admit this time the essays were 100% solicited. Partly because I knew quite a lot of people who I thought would have interesting things to say. So probably, I don't have favourites, they're all my children, I love them equally, but I really, really love the fact that Chloe Masheter has written an essay about the constraints of branching narrative in the form of a choose your own adventure. I mean, they're just so clever. But basically, I went to a bunch of people who I know from talking to and like previous relationships with, have interesting stuff to say, and I said to them, certainly the performance people, like, give me your soapbox subject. What is the thing that you want to say to the world? But then also there was some material. I reached out. There's a couple of reprints from the zine, some like philosophy of play stuff, which I think deserved a wider audience. But also I reached out to some of my sort of foundational Voidspace people, like Neil and Mark Ward, who wrote Fault Lines, which is a sort of branching narrative sonnet, which was the first book that we published, and sort of asked for their thoughts on their Voidspace experiences as well, to be a bit self-indulgent and bring it in to see. But next time, I'm hoping to do an open call and to get a wider room, just see what happens.
On that, what advice would you give to people writing about immersive experiences, like interactive art, participatory?
That's really clever. It's always the last question I ask people, because it just ends things on a high note. I would say follow your interest. Don't be afraid to chase down the weird stuff that the weird thing you saw last week that you personally want to know about, because I think your own nerdy passion for it will show through. Don't be afraid to go in depth. So one of the reasons that I started doing the interviews in the first place is because often a lot of certainly publicly available interviews are created very much for like PR purposes, and you'll just read the same interview 100 times. And I was just really annoyed because I wanted to know more. And yet, follow your own point of annoyance. Anything I've ever managed to successfully follow through has just been on the grounds of just low-key anger and the need to prove a point. You know this feeling. Yeah, it's like, oh, no one will see it, I'm going to have to show them. But also, I think it's really worth, as when you're holding any space, to really think about the comfort of your interviewee. So something I learned on the job is that being very upfront about how the interview is going to be used, that the interviewee, I always give my interviewees one pass at the finished transcript but then that just means that you're going to have a better interview, because if they can have that comfort that they're not going to have to watch every word in the moment because they're going to have a chance to review it, it means that people are going to be more relaxed and hopefully a bit less guarded.
Yes.
In a nice way, able to fully share. Yeah.
I have to say, having done some interviews recently where I've had to transcribe them and then edit them, you wouldn't believe how much work it takes to edit down like a hour-long conversation and do something that actually makes sense when you read it. So it probably looks easy when you read it in the book, but it's actually a ton of work.
If it looks easy, then it means you're doing it right. Well, this is a point to give a shout out to Artemis, who is my absolute right-hand person when it comes to these interviews, because I will get like a rough first transcript of the interview ready, and then Artemis will go and turn it into comprehensible English, and then I will go and look at it more from a kind of editorial point of view. But I think it's the only way that I've been able to keep on producing interviews at pace alongside the festival and everything else. Also I think you don't do it all by yourself. We all need help. Just
I have one last question before we bring Neil on, which is, you began with a literary journal, then a website, a festival, a newsletter, now a book. So what's next?
It's got to be the podcast, isn't it? No, I've been resisting doing a podcast for so long, but
Maybe.
We'll see.
Neil, can we get you on? Neil works as the editor